Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of Heavily Biased Talks College Football. So today we're going to be running down our week 0 picks, our thoughts on week 0. Hey everybody, welcome to the first ever episode of Heavily Biased Talks College Football. Today we're going to be giving our thoughts on week 0. We're also going to be talking about our week 1 picks, and we're going to give you our college football playoff predictions. So Justin, man, how's it going?
It's going real good. About as good as it can go after week 0.
Yeah, we
No
were sitting
disrespect,
there, man. We
but
were
week
all
0 was
excited.
rough.
No, I think you kind of said it best when we were sitting there. We were waiting for the game to start, and 11 o'clock was rolling around, and you're like, "Who's the first game?" I said Notre Dame, Navy at 1:30, and you were not pleased that there was not an 11 o'clock game.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest issue with week 0 was that. Here's the thing: some college football is better than none. Especially college football that matter, those games mattered. Not only was it one of the worst week 0 slates, we usually get one pretty good week 0 game, and Notre Dame, Navy, and Ireland was the big one, I guess you could say. But having no game till 1:30 was awful.
Yeah, and the second biggest game was on Pac-12 Network that nobody has. So you had the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Nobody gets to see him play. I don't know. It just seems super unorganized. To me, there should be a game at every time slot. Some of these teams that never get on TV, they should have been begging to be on at 11. I just think that'd be, college basketball does something kind of like that, where they do I don't know if they still do it, but they used to do the 24 hours of hoops or something. And that's just really cool. You'd have teams playing at 2 in the morning. I mean, again, you probably can't do that for football, but I just think that's a really cool idea. So,
I don't know if I would sacrifice a great week 1 matchup for week 0. I wouldn't want them to take a great week 1 matchup and put it over on, this past weekend. But, I just Hawaii and Vanderbilt ended up being the best game that I watched. I tried to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched pretty much all the games that were offered to me. I was keeping up with the USC game, with highlights and whatnot. But I wouldn't sacrifice a week 1 game. I'd rather have it like this. It gives you a little taste. But like I said, the weird thing about it is that there wasn't that game that was hey, college football's here. It almost felt like preseason still. It almost felt
like an NFL
spring game.
Yeah, or it almost kind of felt like Pro Bowl week in the NFL. It's football, but it's kind of not. And I'm with you. I just wish they would do, have 2 kind of middle of the road teams, and just have them duke it out. I'm trying to think of 2 teams. If Colorado State. I know they play in a couple weeks, but that would be a perfect game. Neither one is expected to, win their conference or anything, but it's 2 kind of known programs. You have Dion making his debut. I just think that would have been perfect. But, they schedule these things years and years in advance.
Well, see, but that's the way I think they should do it. I think week 0 should be for the smaller conferences. I liked seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, that game, was it Jacksonville State that played?
Yeah, I think it was Jacksonville State and...
Or was it...
somebody.
Was it? Anyway, that 2:30 game, I guess it was a 2:30 game. I don't know if it was SWAC or not. I think it was SWAC, but it might not have been. But that would be a great time to marquee those games. But again, you need to as a college football fan, you're expecting games at 11. When I don't get games at 11, and I have to wait till 1:30 to watch a mediocre game that was over by the first quarter. Look, I don't know how good Notre Dame is going to be this year, but Navy looked terrible. And so that's the game I got to look forward to. And before it even started, I was like, well, and again, let me make sure that we know this. I'm not saying I don't want week 0. I like it because, again, it's better than nothing. But I think they should have one marquee game or one game that has smaller conference teams playing just to give them a chance on TV or something, and they did a pretty decent job of that. But again, all I heard all week was like, oh, week 1, it's Caleb Williams time. And then they had that game on Pac-12 Network. And again, a lot of people, they can have access to all those games, but I don't know if unless you were a diehard college football fan, I don't know how many people were tuning in last week. I don't think anybody really felt like last week was really part of the season. It just feels weird.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, the only thing that really kind of made it feel like college football is we had the new Fansville commercial, which was really good. But again, I feel like they should just have like one kind of 2 middle of the road or even lower tier teams that you care about playing, and have it spaced out to where one game's ending and the other game's starting. I don't know. I just thought that'd be a good way to go.
Yeah, and I did check us on this. It was Jacksonville State and UTEP. So, again, I'm looking at the games here. Like San Diego State, Ohio, like I didn't mind that game. That game was pretty good. I thought that game was good. We had some decent games. Like I said, Vanderbilt, Hawaii was a good game. Like I enjoyed watching that one. There were some ups and downs. There were some big plays. But when you have Notre Dame and USC, like as the marquee games, and I think they did Notre Dame's right. Like they made it like a prime 1:30, 2 o'clock game on NBC in Ireland. That USC game, again, I know that Pac-12 Network, it's kind of like Longhorn Network. It's kind of like SEC Network. Like I get it. Like at this point, we're kind of complaining because we didn't really watch much of that game. But I just felt like that was a great time to have, the reigning Heisman winner Caleb Williams, who's now in every commercial now. He's in Wendy's. He's in Fansville.
He's making the most of.
And then you don't have that on like a marquee like ABC time slot. Just and again, I know it's San Jose State, but it's just still a little bit confusing. But again, I digress. We got a great week coming up, but and again, it week 0 does what it's supposed to do. That's why they call it week 0, because they're pretty much telling you this isn't. I mean, this counts. Here's what I want to know: let's just say crazy this happened, okay, in week 0, Notre Dame loses to Navy by a field goal in Ireland. USC loses on a Hail Mary pass to San Jose State. Let's just say that happened. What does that do for them the rest of the season? Like, does the committee look at week 0? Do they give them some slack? Or are they like, hey, you know what? It's week 0.
I mean, maybe if it was now, if you had 2 teams that were, if you had like LSU, Florida State playing week 0, I think that would be. But you can't ever, if you're Notre Dame, you can never lose to Navy. Like they're never going to give you the benefit of the doubt on that.
Yeah, I was kind of making a point of like how much do we look at week 0? Like I already saw like a graphic on ESPN. It's like Caleb Williams 4 touchdown passes. I was like, are we really even going to count this game for the Heisman? Like when we look at his stats at the end of the year, don't we need to say like, well, that was San Jose State?
Yeah, I do think that there should be some kind of, and hey, I'm just letting you know, like when you have the thing really close, you're breathing into the thing, and I can hear. Yeah.
Can you hear it from here?
No, you're good. We'll just breathe out and see what it sounds like. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
No, when I'm not talking, I'll have it down here.
Okay. So yeah, I just, again, I don't think that they're gonna count it one way or the other. I would rather middle of the road teams play week 0, ones that aren't gonna get on TV a lot, like Indiana and someone else, or something like that. I don't know.
I kind of stayed away from week 0. I didn't put any bets on any week 0 games. I didn't even do. I wanted to do like a DraftKings like daily slate. I just, like I said, we're about to get into week 1. That's where it really gets fun. So again, week 0 did what it's supposed to do. It gives you a little bit to talk about heading into week 1. You got a little bit of a look at Notre Dame there. You got a little bit of a look at Sam Hartman, who looked good, who looked really good. But again,
yeah,
it was Navy. No disrespect to Navy, but that was, Notre Dame should win that game by quite a bit. But
all right, so so I did a couple. I sent out on X, I guess it's called now. I'm never gonna get used to that. But I sent out 3 picks and I went 2-1. I missed the USC covering, but I had, what were the other 2? I had Hawaii covering. I think it was 17 or 17.5, and then I had the under in the Navy Notre Dame game.
Yeah, you barely got
which
that.
Wasn't looking good at
that
first. Well, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't looking good at first, but
I honestly thought that was going to be like a
right.
28-7 game. I was kind of shocked how bad Navy looked. I don't think I'm not sure if that's how Navy's going to be all year, but they just looked like it was bad.
Well, they're just a team that once they get behind, it's
hard to
over.
come back.
I mean, they can't. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and get into week 1. So there's a couple of good games this first week. I think there's I tried to pick like the 6 most talked about games, and there's some for week 1. Like there's some really good matchups that I'm intrigued by.
I'll tell you, I love the Thursday night game. We're about to get in that floor game. I love a good Thursday night game, man. See, to me, a Thursday night game, sometimes some of the best games of the year are these Thursday night games. I cannot wait for this Florida-Utah game. Like, I feel like that's such a great kick. You know, this to me feels like the real kickoff to the season, this Florida-Utah game. You know what I mean?
I'll be honest, man. I think this is a game that Florida can steal. I'm not real sure what the deal with Cam Rising is. It sounds like they're not sure he's going to play. And if he is, you know, how banged up is he going to be? I do feel like Florida is going to be kind of I think they're going to have a bounce back from last year. I think they had a real rough season last year. So yeah, I think Florida's going to cover this, and I would not be shocked if they win.
Yeah, I like Utah in this game quite a bit, actually. If the spread gets any higher than 6.5, start getting a little. I like that. I think I'd probably take it up to like 7.5, 8.5. I don't know, but I see Utah kind of controlling this game. To be honest with you, I'm still wondering. I'm interested to see what Florida does with year 2 of Billy Napier, and I think he's going to get them on the right track. I think like Florida will eventually be potentially really good. I think he was the right hire there, but I don't know, man. Utah at Utah Thursday night. I don't know, man. I just, I don't have any reason like in-depth stuff for it, but I would definitely take 6.5 with Utah here.
The next game is, and again, I want to double check these because
I got them right here. We doing any other Thursday? I got Minnesota, Nebraska here.
Yeah, so that was another one. So I got Minnesota minus 7.5, over under 44.5. Is that what you got?
I don't know, man. I don't know anything about these teams this year. Like, if this was last year, I would know. But
well, I do think that what's the guy that used to be at Baylor? He
Art
just
Briles.
left Carolina. Oh no, yeah, I don't know if Art Briles is going to be coaching in Nebraska anytime soon. I'm just blanking on his name right now, but it's his first game at Nebraska. Minnesota's always one of those teams, man. It's just they always play tough. So I'm gonna go Minnesota just because I feel like it's gonna take Nebraska, a season or 2 to kind of get the kinks out. He's got to get his system in there. So give me Minnesota minus 7.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay away from this game personally, but for the show, I'll take Minnesota also. I mean, I'm taking home teams. I feel like home teams for me this week are going to be very I like home teams in week 1. I have no stats to back it up at all. I have no idea if that's a good thing or not. A lot of times you get some of these neutral site games. I just feel like everybody's going to be a little nervous. Everybody's going to come out super. I don't think the conditioning is there, so I think the crowd noise can kind of help with that. I think a lot of teams get tired at the end of the end of the third quarter, end of the fourth quarter because they haven't got their legs underneath them yet. So yeah, I'll take Minnesota. I just think they're going to pound the rock and probably rack up 200 rushing yards. That's just
so you don't
gut
have any,
instinct.
You don't have any stats. Yeah, you don't have any stats to back it up, but you're just gonna throw out a random rushing prediction.
It's just gut instinct, man. I'm literally looking at Nebraska coming in there and just getting knocked in the teeth with some Minnesota, like 3 running backs, 15 carries apiece, 200 200 rushing yards. Yeah.
All right, well let's move on to the next game. Colorado at TCU. TCU minus 21. Actually, it's 20.5 now. And over under 64. So this is a tough game, man, because you feel like all the changes that they've made over at Colorado, you feel like, okay, Deion's going to be coming in. They're going to want to make a statement. TCU, who got absolutely embarrassed on the national stage in the national championship game, what are they going to bounce back, or how are they going to bounce back? But this is a tough one to pick. I think I'm going to go the under TCU and Colorado, because I feel like TCU is going to put up some points, but I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how Colorado is going to come out. I don't know if they have the horses yet. I know they got some big name guys that transferred in, but there's a difference between having 1 or 2 studs and then having the depth that TCU is probably going to have. So give me the under in this one, 64. Yeah, 64.
Yeah, TCU, man. I think Deion, as I said before, I think Deion's going to get that going. I think he's going to have these guys fighting every week. They're never going to quit. But I'm telling you, man, TCU at home, I like TCU a lot.
Well, it's a step up from what they're used to. I mean, a lot of these guys are used to playing, lesser competition. So,
and it's a step up for Deion. I mean, Deion did a great thing by hiring a lot of good coordinators around him. And I think Deion has got the ego, but he's also smart with hey, I got to get some of these other. But I think it's a step up for him as well as a coach. I am very interested to see how he calls this game against Sonny. But I think TCU is going to put a lot of points on the board. So I'll take the points. I'm going to stay away from the over-under because I'm really not sure how much Colorado is going to score. But I like TCU to put 40 on them.
Next game, Boise State at Washington. This is a very intriguing game just because Boise State, ever since that run and that Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma, they're kind of like the Gonzaga of college football. They're that mid-major team that you always kind of have to watch out for. They haven't had the success that Gonzaga's had, but people forget it took Gonzaga a long time to get there. So yeah, it's I got right now over under 58.5 and Washington minus 14.5. Washington, I think is gonna be really good this year. They got Penix back, but I don't know. There's just something about Boise State that I feel like you always kind of have to be on your A game, and this is probably the hardest game for me to pick. But I think I'm gonna go Washington. Actually, yeah, give me Washington. I just feel like at home, they're gonna have to start racking up some. They're not gonna be able to kind of coast because every team now to get in that 14 playoff, you have to put your best foot forward every week, and I feel like Washington will kind of do that, and I think they'll pull away late. So give me Washington minus 14.5.
I like the over in this game actually. A little part of me was thinking, man, this has all the makings of an under type game because you got Marcus Penix coming in.
Michael.
He's one of
Michael Penix.
It's not Marcus anymore. Changed his name from last year.
It was never Marcus.
What's sad is he was on my fantasy team last year. Michael Penix. My apologies to Mr. Penix. Michael Penix is going to come in. He's going to want look. I think week 1 is like Heisman week because Washington has a great opportunity to get Penix. And again, I know we're super early into the season, but this is just how these things are. This is all everybody talks about. After week 1, if Penix has an incredible game, we're already talking Heisman, all this stuff. Washington has arguably the best receivers in the country if you just look at their top two guys. I think that they're going to score a lot of points. I think Boise, they kind of come in with the name of Boise and stuff, but Washington, Washington's a tough place to play. Again, I'm taking a lot of home teams this week one. I just think that the legs are going to start giving, and I give that to the offense. Like when teams get tired, I'm going to give it to the offense, especially if the offense is a passing offense. So, yeah, I'm going to take the over. I do like Washington. I'm not going to take the 14.5, even though that's what I would pick if I was taking the line on the game, but I'm going to take the over.
All right, and the next game is North Carolina at South Carolina. North Carolina is -2.5, over under 64.5. Give me the over on this one. I feel like this is going to be like video game numbers. North Carolina last year, unless they've gotten better at defense, they could not stop anybody last year. They're going to put up a ton of points. Drake May came back. I feel like he's going to have a huge day. And Spencer Rattler really came into his own at the end of last year too. So I think this is going to be a shootout, man, back and forth, and probably whoever has the ball last will probably win this thing. So give me the over.
This is my game of the week, personally. This is the game I'm most excited to see this week because I think that we're going to see how good Drake May is this year, because I think that last year as a freshman he proved that he was an incredible player. But it is going to be interesting to see after a full offseason of people having film on him, going up against an SEC defense on the road. Like, I think this is such a great test for him. We talked about, kind of putting your name not only on the Heisman, but maybe being the first quarterback taken in the upcoming draft. Is he a redshirt? Could he leave after this year, or is he only a true sophomore?
No, he can leave. I'm
so
pretty sure he can
I
leave.
think South Carolina is going to handle business here. I think Beamer's got something really good going over there at South Carolina. I think South Carolina might be that team this year that I bet a lot, because I just feel like they're going to be in a lot of situations to where they're either undervalued or overvalued, depending on a big win from the previous week. Week one at home, I think they turn over Drake May a few times. I think South Carolina's defense shows up, so I'm just going to take South Carolina with the points on this one. You said it was 2.5, right?
Yeah, they're +2.5, South Carolina.
Yeah, I could see this line changing to just basically a pick 'em. I mean, I think this line will shift throughout the week. But yeah, give me South Carolina with the points here.
And then the last game of the weekend will be Sunday night. This is the game that is just, I love when teams do this. Week 2, you've got some big games. Texas, Alabama, Oregon, Texas Tech. But I love when big-time programs schedule other big-time programs. I mean, it's just such a huge, like, if you win this game, it's such a momentum driver for you that it can just propel you right into the playoff. I mean, yeah, you got to take care of business the rest of the way, but I just love when teams do this. So, but this is gonna be a tough game. This is another tough game to pick. I got Florida State is +2.5, and the over/under is 58.
I don't think you even said the matchup,
one, man.
I don't think you said the matchup yet for the listeners.
Oh, Florida State at LSU. I thought
LSU at Florida State.
But anyways, Florida
playing in Orlando.
No, Florida State. Yeah, it's
Camping World Stadium, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, LSU at Florida State. Huge game. Give me Florida State. I don't know. There's just something about Florida State this year. I really like their coach. I think they have a quarterback that can turn a lot of heads, can make a lot of plays. He reminds me a lot of like Caleb Williams / like Bryce Young, where he can single-handedly win a game for you. And they're going to need that this weekend. And I think they're going to come ready to play. I think they're going to come out strong. So give me Florida State. Give me Florida State to just win.
This game reminds me so much of the Joe Burrow eventual national champion LSU Tigers at the Texas Longhorns. It reminds me so much of that game, because I feel like you have a Florida State team that could do big things this year. And I feel like you have an LSU team that could, I mean, obviously they're both preseason top 10, but I feel like this game is way, way, way more important for Florida State. Like, not even close. It's more important than for Florida State. Florida State's not going to have near as many opportunities to have huge wins as LSU would have. LSU could probably drop this game, and they might fall out of the top 10. But LSU, but if Florida State doesn't handle business, the way their schedule's looking, they're not going to have as many opportunities to kind of impress the committee or whatever.
Well, and you look at say Florida State loses this game, and then they got Clemson in a few weeks. Say they drop that game. Now they're 2 losses. Yeah, they could still somehow sneak into the conference title game. But there's no way that they're going to be in the playoff unless some weird thing happens. LSU, if they lose this game, they've got a tougher schedule ahead. But if they take care of business, I feel like it's not going to matter. If you win the SEC, you're almost guaranteed a spot in the playoff unless something weird happens. So yeah, I do think,
and that's why it reminds me of that Texas. It reminds me of that Texas team, because the Texas team had that was the year that everybody was thinking, hey, this could be the year. Like, this could be the year they make the playoff. They lose that game in a heartbreaker. I mean, again, this is the eventual national champion Joe Burrow team, and they lost it in a heartbreaker, and their season derailed. I could see the same thing happening to this Florida State team, because Florida State, just like Texas from those years ago, it is so difficult for these programs to get back on track, because the hardest thing to do is not have a good season, it's to have back-to-back good seasons. It's to get in the habit of winning and to win big games. Everything tells me to take Florida State on the game. Like, I think Florida State's better. I think LSU's actually a little overrated this year. I think Brian Kelly, I think this is solely a Brian Kelly ranking, because I think Brian Kelly's that good of a coach. Florida State has to have this game. I think this is going to be the biggest game in Florida State in a long time. They're going to be hyped. I think Jordan Travis has an absolute incredible game, and I think Florida State wins it. But it would not shock me whatsoever if LSU came in, knocked them in the mouth early, and run away with this one. So I think it's going to be Florida State. What's the line on this one right now?
Florida State plus 2.5.
Yeah, give me Florida State outright. I'm with you. I think, I would take the points, obviously, but I'm going to even take Florida State outright to win. I mean, I think Florida State wins. This seems like a field goal game, like comes down to the last second. Like, I think this is going to be an incredible game. And like I said, I see LSU being a little overrated this year, man. Personally, I'm a little shocked they're 5th preseason.
Well, they just, they beat. I think they beat Alabama last year, and then they just had a really good run at the end of the season. That kind of got, because they're like the first couple weeks of the season, people were already talking about, is Brian Kelly the right guy for the job? I mean, that just shows you how crazy these fan bases can be. That a guy literally his first or second game of his tenure, and they're already talking about getting rid of the guy.
And I will say, if LSU comes in and just knocks them around and just dominates the game, I think it answers every question you ever have about how deep the talent pool in the SEC is. Because, again, this is Florida State's probably best chance they've had since Jameis Winston to make some big-time noise, to potentially compete for a national championship. If they lose this game, I honestly think this could kind of – I feel like this could kind of not torpedo their season, because their schedule is just not too difficult, but I could see them getting 3 or 4 losses this year. I know that sounds wild, because it's like, well, it's just LSU, but I think that's how important this game is for them this year.
See, I don't look at it that way. Now, if they go in there and they get blown out, they get embarrassed, then yeah, I mean that could be. But if they go in there and they lose a field goal game to another top program, I don't think that's. I don't necessarily see it being something that could derail their whole season.
It'll haunt them at night. It'll haunt their dreams, man.
It'll scare them back into oblivion.
Doesn't this feel like the old days, though, when you used to get those opening week, Florida State, sometimes you'd even get Florida State, Miami early in the year, or Florida State, Virginia Tech or something. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm getting the teams wrong, but I just remember back at like early 2000s, you'd always see a night Florida State game.
Alabama normally plays, they'll play like one year I remember they played USC, and it's always at like the Georgia Dome. And I just remember, and you'll see stuff about it on Twitter all the time, but it's like USC when they're coming out onto the field, and they're like dogs, they're like barking and stuff, like people are like holding them back, and they got beat like 45-7 or something, and people are just they're like, never forget that this is how USC came out onto the field when they got destroyed.
And I'm a moron because I'm realizing that this is a neutral site. I mean, it's still in Florida, but this is a neutral site game. I've been talking like, man, LSU's going to go in there and blah, blah, blah. I still kind of stand by what I said, but at the same time, being a neutral site, like I just wish these games could be home and home. I'm so glad a lot of these schools are going back to home and home. I mean, Texas, Alabama going home to home. Texas, Michigan going home to home. We've seen a lot of these programs starting to do this again, and I just think that makes it so much better, personally. I'm not a huge fan of the neutral site game in week 1 at all. I think there's I don't know, man. Every time I see a neutral site game, I lose a little bit more interest in it because I just feel like, could you imagine if this game was at Florida State?
Well, I just feel like you take out the biggest drawing point for college football is the fans and the stadium atmospheres. Like, I feel like you're kind of neutering those games a little bit. So those are our picks for week 1. So let's get into, I don't know if you had a chance to look at any future plays, win losses, but I've got a few that I'm looking at.
I gotta change my pick. I gotta change my pick to LSU. I'm looking at Camping World Stadium, man. Something came over me. It's like, what are you doing? And then I remembered that Brian Kelly is on the other sideline, and I think this moment's gonna be too big for Florida State.
Norvell's on the other one.
That's true, but I think Florida State has a better. See, I'm contradicting myself. I don't know anymore, man. This game.
Just make a pick, man.
Hey, listen.
Just make a pick.
This game right here, it'll test you. I'm going to take LSU. I'm going to take LSU with the points. Yeah. LSU's overrated this year, but I think this is too big for Florida State.
They're going to put that on their bulletin board.
I totally went 180,
first thing in the morning.
I'm telling you, that's how big.
Yeah, you did.
Neutral site to me changes everything.
All right, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at the over-unders for different teams, but there's a few that I really like. So I'm going to kind of
talking about season totals for wins.
Yeah, season totals. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 5 that I like a lot. So the first one is Oklahoma State over 6.5. Their schedule is so beneficial for them this year. They don't. I think they only play one team in Texas, and that's Houston. So they only play one team from the state of Texas. Let me pull up their schedule real quick. So they got Central Arkansas, Arizona State, South Alabama, Iowa State, and then they got K-State, Kansas, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Oklahoma at home. So they'll be at home for Bedlam, UCF, Houston, and BYU. I just feel like that's. I mean,
how is that schedule possible?
They added all those new teams, and that's the way it shook out. I mean, so yeah. But I feel like the OU game, I feel like that's a toss-up. I feel like K-State, they'll have K-State at home. I mean, they could go 9-3, something like that. I mean, I would not be shocked. 8-4 easily. And who knows? Depending on how the Big 12 unfolds this year, they could sneak their way into the title or the Big 12 championship game. All right, so Florida. I like Florida over 6.5. I like Texas Tech over 7.5. I like Iowa over 8.5, and I like Wisconsin over 8.5. I really like Wisconsin over 8.5. I think Luke Fickell. First of all, I think that whole side of the Big Ten is just so much easier to navigate than the one with Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State. But I think Luke Fickell. I really like him as a coach, and I think they could make some noise. So I like them to get at least 9 wins. Any of those?
Sorry, I'm still looking at this Oklahoma State schedule. I can't believe this schedule. This is a wild schedule here. Like that's one of the weirdest schedules I think I've seen in a long time. Like when you said that to me, I was like, dude, he's got to be looking at something else. Like that's a wild schedule. Like just the dates they're playing the games and stuff. Man, I'm kind of with you on that a little bit. I don't know how good Oklahoma State's going to be this year. I know they're kind of having to replace a lot of guys, but man.
I just feel like Gundy gets his guys ready, and you look at their first 3 games. I feel like their first 3 games are wins: Central Arkansas, Arizona State, South Alabama, and then Iowa State. You know, who knows how good Iowa State's going to be this year? They just seem like they haven't been the same the last couple of seasons.
Give me the over/under for what's the over/under for South Carolina this year? Total wins. I haven't really had a chance to look at it, to be honest with you, but I do want to pick one. And South Carolina is a team I like.
A lot of dead air.
Well, I mean, I should have been. I usually, just to put this out there, I normally never do these futures like this, so I'm just wanting to pick one for the show. But
South Carolina over 6.5. So their number is 6.5.
I'll take that. I think they get to 7 or 8 this year. And you know who else I like? And I'm going to look at it right now. I don't know what Missouri's is, and I know this is SEC. But man, I like Missouri and South Carolina this year. Yeah, I'm looking at their schedule here. Well. Give me. You know what, man? I can't take both.
I take it back. Florida isn't 6.5. Florida is 5.5. So I'm definitely on that.
I tell you what. Give me Missouri here. I'm gonna just pick one for you. I'm looking at Missouri's schedule here. They open it up with South Dakota. Then they go, and these are both at home. Then they got Middle Tennessee. Then they got their real first test here, hosting Kansas State, who I think is going to be really, really good this year. So let's just say they drop that one. We're at 2-1. Then they host Memphis. Then they go on the road to Vanderbilt, and they don't even have a full stadium. Then they got to host LSU. Yeah. Then on the road at Kentucky. The South Carolina game is going to decide on October 21st. But if that's 6.5, I'm definitely give me Missouri.
That and Arkansas, yeah. Because you look,
yeah, the schedule for Missouri.
South Dakota,
man.
1, 2, 3, 4. You're at 4. I don't know, man. Then they got to pick up 3 between Kentucky, LSU, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Arkansas.
I'm assuming, me picking this is assuming they take care of business at home against South Carolina and against Florida. Now they got to pick up a big road win somewhere. Because, again, I'm not going to take them over Tennessee. I'm not going to take them on the road at Arkansas, even though they could totally win that game. I'd not take them on the road at Georgia.
Arkansas is a weird team. Sometimes you feel like they're on the cusp of something, and then they just.
That's my pick, though. Let's have a little fun this year. I'm actually gonna bet this for Missouri. I think the schedule lines up pretty good for them. I think that they got it going in the right direction over there. If you take Missouri out of the SEC, put them anywhere else, I think they may, it's just, they get beat up on. I mean, all these teams in the SEC just beat up on each other, but I like the way the schedule lines up for them.
All right. So those are our futures picks. If I had to pick one guy, so if I had to pick one guy that's kind of out of nowhere for the Heisman, I was looking at this earlier, and I think the one that I like the most was, where is he? Okay, so this is going to be kind of weird, and I know you're not going to sign off on this because he screwed you in fantasy football
I'll never sign off on it if it's – who is it?
I'm going to say Travion Henderson plus 5,000. I just feel like if they're going to be – like, I don't think they're going to be able to lean on a quarterback like they have been with Stroud. And I feel like he's going to have to be what they thought he was going to be last year. I like him, and I also like Jalen Daniels at 7,500 is intriguing too. Like if they win that first game and he beasts, that number is going to be cut in half at least. So those are the two kind of out of the
I would
box
stay
guys
as
I
far away from that Travion Henderson. I think that they're going to have at least a 2-back committee there this year. I think Travion Henderson's a super talented guy, but he's got question marks with health. To me, they're going to be pushing for Marvin Harrison Jr. this year. I think if anybody gets it from Ohio State, it'll be a receiver. The award's just not lined up for anybody other than a quarterback to win it unless you just have a monster running back season in your team's great. I mean, look at Blake Horn last year. I mean, had an incredible year. And never really, I mean, he was, in the discussion, but we all knew it was going to go quarterback. I'm going to go, I'm with you on that LSU Florida State game. I think Jordan Travis, I know he's one of the favorites, but that's who I would put my money on because I feel like he's got a great,
like whoever,
it's a huge game to kick off the year. If he has an incredible game, he's the front runner at the beginning of the year. And he doesn't have a ton of games. He's going to be putting up big numbers in the ACC. Then it comes down to the Clemson game and the ACC championship game. So honestly, he needs to have 3 monster Heisman performance games, and that's it. It's so hard for some of these guys in the SEC. Like you're looking at a guy like Joe, Milton, and you're looking at some of these other guys. Even Jalen Daniels. I just think the schedule is so difficult that unless they're constantly having big game after big game, if they have one bad game against a really good defense, that kind of takes them out of it. I mean, we could agree that C.J. Stroud. Yeah.
I was just going to say, it kind of reminds me of that movie, The Program, when Joe Kane went into Michigan and he was playing against the other Heisman guy. And then they lost to Michigan, and then he had that cardboard cutout that he burnt. Remember?
Not really. I remember those dudes spitting in each other's mouths.
You don't remember that movie, The Program? You don't remember that movie?
I remember them. I remember those dudes spitting in each other's mouths. I remember him being in the weight room saying, "Hey, you're using that. We created all this because we make so much money or whatever. Basically, she wouldn't have a weight room to work out in." And then I remember that guy who fumbles all the time. He's having to carry around a football. And then that guy bashes his head through the guy on roids bashes his head through the windshield.
To say that. Yeah. It's a great movie.
And it has the late, great James Conn. That's what I remember.
Yeah. All right.
I'm not a big fan of the program.
I love it. Last thing on the show this week, let's jump into our college football playoff predictions. I know you're going to hate mine.
Probably, yeah. That sounds right.
All right. So I've got Michigan is the number 1 overall. Florida State, the number 2, Alabama, the 3, and then I got our Texas Longhorns at number 4. I feel like their schedule is primed for if they win that Alabama game, or even if it's close, and then they go and they kind of fix the hiccups they had last year with close games. I mean, they go 11-1 and win the Big 12, they're in. And I think that's possible. And again, I'm not saying that if they don't do this, then the season's a failure. I do think they have to. I think they have to go at the bare minimum 9-3, and that's including the Alabama loss. But I would say closer to like 10-2, somewhere around there.
10-2 to what?
And I got
to get in the playoff.
No. I'm just saying for them for Texas fans to feel like
I was about to say a
successful season. No, for them to feel like it was a successful season, I feel like 10-2. I feel like 9-3. If one of those losses was Alabama and we're in the Big 12 championship game, I feel like Texas fans would be like, okay, we're on the right track. And then I got Michigan beating Texas. I got Alabama beating Florida State. And then I just feel like this is Michigan's year, man. I feel like they've been on the doorstep the last 2 years. They've kind of stumbled in that semifinal game, and I just feel like this is kind of the year. Georgia, I feel like it's going to be extremely difficult for them to three-peat. And I just like their brand of football, man. I just like the way that they just kind of punch you in the mouth and just kind of take away your will a little bit. I just love that. And I like Harbaugh. I know there's kind of a love-hate thing with him and everybody, but I really like what he brings to the game, and I definitely prefer Michigan to win it over Alabama. So yeah.
Yeah, I got the toughest one for me to pick is who's coming out of the SEC, because I feel like Georgia, yeah, everything's telling me like, man, they can't get. But again, how many were Alabama getting into in a row? I think Georgia's in their Alabama phase here, so I can't bet against Georgia. Like I know that's like the cool thing to do this year is like, hey man, we got to find 4 new teams. Like we got to find somebody new. Until somebody proves to me that Georgia, it's just like with Alabama. I mean, it took Alabama getting beat for us to finally be like, oh, wow, okay, so they're not unbeatable in big games. Cool. Okay. Same with Georgia, man. Like, I got to keep taking Georgia. So I'm going to put Georgia. I'm with you on Michigan. I just think that Michigan, it comes down to that Michigan-Ohio State game. Ohio State's got some questions at quarterback, in my opinion. I think Michigan,
who?
Again,
Ohio State, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Who'd you think I said?
Well, I initially thought you said Michigan, and I was like, well, they have the same guy they had last year, but it makes sense.
Man,
okay.
I know a little bit about college football. I hate to say it because I hate to sound like a homer, but if Texas doesn't get in the playoff this year, I don't know if they will in the next decade. I know that sounds crazy because they got all kinds of great talent.
It's going to go to 12 teams in a couple years.
Right. That's my point. Listen, here's the thing. I think about one game at a time. I think about one game at a time. That's all I do. I think about that. I'm not even thinking this far ahead.
You already predicted
here's
the next
thing.
decade.
Here's the thing. Texas has got to get in this year. Like, I can't accept anything but 10 wins. If they don't get in the playoff, okay, I can live with that. You got to get 10 wins. Got to get 10 wins. You got to win the conference this year. If they don't win the conference this year, and again, I don't want to turn this into a Texas podcast, but if they don't win the conference this year, man, my God. I mean, they have to win it this year. Like, Kansas State's going to be the team, in my opinion, that gives them the most hell. I think Kansas State matches up really well with them. I think Kansas State's going to be really good. But Texas has got to get there. So, like you said, because of their schedule and because that I'm honestly looking at it, and I'm looking at the Alabama game, and honestly, every other game they should be favored to win. And so I got to take Texas. I think Texas is the sexy pick this year. We're all going to look stupid because they're going to drop a game to Kansas or something. But I'm going to put Texas as well. So my 4 will be Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and then my 4th team is Oregon. I really like Oregon this year. I think Bo Nix has, and again, yes, I took him on my fantasy team. I took him on my fantasy team in the first round. So I have a little bit of bias here, but that's what the show's called. I really like Oregon this year, and I like Bo Nix, and I think that he could have that type of year where he kind of carries the team into the playoffs. So those would be my 4s: Oregon, Georgia, as the 1 and 4, Texas, Michigan, and man, I got to go Georgia, Michigan, man, and I got to go Georgia. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. 3 in a row. But when I'm looking at it like this, like who matches up with them, Who's going to score on that defense consistently?
The only thing I'm really worried about with Georgia is, they lost Bennett, who, again, I don't think he was, Caleb Williams or anything, but he did have a way of making big plays when they needed him to. And I just feel like they're going to miss that a little bit. And their running back room is, extremely banged up. So we'll see. I agree with toughest,
you. I agree
omission.
with you. Let me go Oregon, Texas in the final. And I'm going to go, you know what? I'm tired of being afraid, man. I really am. I'm tired of it. We're going Texas to cut down the nets. Or to cut down the goalposts.
Basketball. Dude,
Let's go Texas. Let's have a little fun, man. Let's go Texas this year.
I went
Yeah.
from worried that you were going to give me shit about picking Texas to be in the college football playoff to you picking them to win it, all because I said that Georgia has a banged up running back room.
You convinced me, man. You convinced me.
All right.
You know more about that Georgia program than I do. You know I like to stick to my Big 12 and my Big 10.
I watched Josh Pate's show last night, and he was covering it. So,
and here's the thing you're going to get from me all season. You're never going to get in depth. I watch the games, but I don't know shit about, like, I'm not really, like, super knowledgeable about the sport.
Yeah, we're not
but I'm telling you what you
will
get. You'll get somebody that does his research. You'll get some, even though I thought that Florida State was going to play at home, and I didn't know about the expansion for college football. But other than that, man, I look into things. But yeah, I'm only picking Texas for the same reason you do. The schedule is just like, if they are as good as we think they can be, the schedule is just wide open for them to go to it. I mean, you can't ask for a better setup if you're a Texas fan. And I'm honestly saying this as somebody who thinks that Texas has been abysmal. And when they are expected to do really well, they always drop a game they're not supposed to, which will probably happen again this year. But if Ewers even plays like a good quarterback, I don't even think he has to be great, because I think our defense is going to be incredible. But like you said, it really is about ease of schedule. That's why we always get 2 Big Ten teams in there. That's why.
But see, I don't think Texas has an easy schedule, but I do think they have a manageable schedule. Like, they have K-State at home. The Oklahoma game, I feel like, is always, you can kind of throw the records out in that game. And then you have TCU at TCU, and then Tech at home. Those are the 4 games, conference games, that I think could trip them up. Everything else, I feel like they should be.
Yeah, let me rephrase. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy schedule. All I'm getting at is the schedule is open for them to get into a playoff. Like, there hasn't been a year that they've had a better opportunity to get in the playoff in the past since they've been there, since they played in the BCS championship game. I just think that the schedule is open. I think the Big 12 is going to be really deep and good this year, but I don't see anybody in the Big 12. If both teams play well, I think we should beat every team in the Big 12.
We'll be the most talented team in the conference by a good margin, I think. And I don't think I think people thought that we were for a few years, but in reality we weren't. But I do think that it's like undeniable this year.
And again, Michigan with the schedule. I mean, Michigan with the schedule as well. Like, the schedules play a huge part in it. I mean, I think Oregon, out of all the teams I picked, Oregon, I feel like, and Georgia are going to be, especially Oregon. Because Oregon, I think the Pac-12 is going to have some tough games for Oregon to overcome. But yeah, I feel good about those picks. Like I said, Georgia's just in that situation now to where I got to see them get beat.
I really think the Pac-12 is going to be one of the most competitive conferences out there. I mean, they got 6 teams that, if any of those 6 won it, I wouldn't be shocked. So, but all right, man. Well, good week 1 show. Hopefully, some of our picks hit, and we can come in next week and talk about how great we did and how much knowledge we have, but we'll see.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised after hearing me on this show. They're going to be like, man, this guy's I'm going to fade him all week. And then they're going to wake up on Monday morning, since we got a Sunday game. Do we have a Monday game too? Yeah, they're going to wake up on Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
And be like, my God, if I would have just listened.
Clemson?
Yeah. But we are not experts at all. Do not take our, gamble responsibly.
That's weird to have a conference game that, week 1.
ACC always does that, I've noticed. ACC always kicks off with like a conference game, I feel like. I always feel like that's a conference that starts with it. And sometimes the SEC
like a couple years ago, it was like Virginia Tech played Duke or something. I don't know why that. It could be wrong, but for some reason that sticks out in my mind.
But we're excited for the college football year. I can't wait. It's going to be nice to actually watch the teams play on the field. I feel like everybody week 1 is going solely based on last year and what they're hearing other people say. Like, we're just going based on what we hear. Like a lot of people get to see the practices or the spring game or whatever. That's fine. We really don't know until we get into the season. So I'm super excited to kind of see the games with week 1 unfold. I think it's going to be a hell of a week. I think we might get an upset special week 1. I feel like there's always a crazy game that where nobody's looking at that happens. So I'm excited to see what that could be.
Yep. Me too, man. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next week and have a good one.